Hey, welcome everybody to today's session of Vantage Point, enhancing employee well-being in a hybrid work environment, sponsored by our good friends at Vantage Circle. And with me today is my good friend and writing partner, the one, the only, Adrian Gostek.
Well, thanks, Jess. Yeah, today we're going to address how HR at all levels can help leaders create workplaces that are a little bit more inclusive and maybe a lot more flexible than we've ever been. And today we've got three expert guests from around the world to discuss this topic. We've got joining us from the US, Europe, and Asia. We've got folks from everywhere. Bahar Ozakan is the Senior Director of Global Corporate Wellbeing at Concentric, which has today 300,000 employees around the world. Within a few months, we'll have 500,000 employees around the world. So Bahar is experienced in leading wellness best practices and is a knowledgeable clinical psychologist with an established history of planning and executing corporate psychological health and safety programming through research and innovation. We're excited to hear from her. Rachel Lutz Guevara is Vice President of Global Wellbeing and Resiliency at Tascas, which has 55,000 employees. Rachel is a board-approved supervisor and licensed clinical social worker and brings a wealth of experience in trust and safety, business process outsourcing, technology, healthcare, diversity and inclusion, collegiate and crisis and risk management. Partha Niag is founder and CEO of Vantage Circle, a leader in the employee recognition, engagement, and wellness space. He has an MBA from the Indian School of Business and is bringing a background in engineering and technology to disrupt the way that HR engages employees and builds benefit programs. And we're excited to have all three with us today. So we'll start with Bahar, who is joining us from Turkey today. What challenges do leaders face when you're considering employee well-being in a hybrid world? What are we seeing that maybe we didn't see a few years ago?
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Hope everybody can hear me very well. This is one of the challenges of working from home environment, having internet connection issues. One challenge is that one would be, but majorly I would say this is still new area for everybody. Although after COVID, we talk about work from home, hybrid environment a lot, still it's new. For the last 2-3 years, maybe for some very, visionalist companies, it would be 5 years, but still it's new. Since it's new, the information is a little bit limited. And since the maybe research is limited, we still don't know what is needed for ourselves as a manager. Since we don't know actually sometimes what's needed for ourselves, we cannot actually develop quicker and agile processes for our staff members, that I would say. But mostly the challenge is sensitization, because we are all different culturally, age-wise, needs and everything is different. We are coming from a diverse background, and coming from that inclusive environment and actually thinking inclusively is a challenge for everybody. What is the need? Making a research about it, making an assessment, and being honest and vulnerable about asking questions like, what do you need in a hybrid environment or work from home environment would be a challenge for the managers. So I would say assessing. So rather than coming up with quick solutions, assessment piece that I would say has been a big challenge for majority of the managers in the hybrid environment.
So tell us a little bit about you, before we move on from you, Bahar. Tell us a little bit about Concentric and the type of employees that you have and the kind of work environments that you're dealing with around the world.
Yeah. Of course, we have locations and offices more than 40 countries, and all our staff members working for a very diverse line of businesses. So there are different ethnicities, more than 100, and age groups are very diverse. We have a very young workforce, and actually managers are coming from, again, diverse environment. I would say our industry is very challenging because trust and safety, healthcare, technology, IT, we are dealing with very different challenges. It would be keeping up with productivity, or even having a very strict line with work-life balance. It would be even taking care of our own mental health at the workplace and taking care of our peers. So it would be from work-related wise and personal and social relationship wise, we are dealing and facing with different challenges in the workplace. And for now, up until now, 60% of our workforce working from home environment. Wow. Only 40% are working in the office now.
That's a big number when you think of 300,000 people. Rachel, give us a little insight into, first off, who TaskUs is and what kind of employee base you have. Where are people, and then tell us a little bit about the challenges of working and building well-being in this hybrid world.
Sure. Yeah. So not too dissimilar to what Bahar does. TaskUs also manages a variety of clients in about 15 different countries. So we also have a global reach, also a relatively young workforce that are coming from a variety of different cultures, religions, and backgrounds that are often working a variety of different hours as well to meet business needs across the globe. As far as some of the things that we have been doing in the past 3 years to look at well-being needs, to Bahar's point, has been gathering a lot of data, right? Because data is what informs the decisions that we make at all levels of the business. So over the course of the last few years, we've done longitudinal studies on return to office and working from home to help inform our executive leadership team on the decisions that they need to consider when making decisions about returning to office or staying in a work from home environment. Our split is roughly about the same, more of like a 50-50 split from working at home versus working in office. And we do have some hybrid working models. But since the places that Bahar and I work for are in the service to a variety of other clients, those clients have nuanced needs that have to be taken into consideration when making those decisions as well.
So I think I speak for a lot of people when they say, okay, give us the data. So give us high level, what did you find with your studies?
Yeah, well, I think, again, keeping in mind that there is nuance, and we would be painting a little bit with a broad brush here, but in younger employee bases, I think broadly what we see over and over again is that the perception of well-being is higher when people are working from home. And that's across all countries, right? So we have to consider things like, family systems, childcare, commute time, all of these sorts of things that go into like what makes up somebody's holistic view of their own well-being. And while, of course, that's not true for every single person that we look at, the broad consensus is that well-being perception is higher for those that are able to work from home.
That's great. Well, Bartha, is that what you're seeing? Now, you work with a lot of clients around the world. Well, what are you seeing with well-being in a hybrid world? What's different for us to be aware of?
Yeah, there are really actually cool data results that I like to share. One of them is there's a really important positive relationship between engagement, site safety, and productivity. And when the psychological safety is arising through the awareness, through access to wellness resources, you feel more engaged. When you are more engaged, your productivity and even the quality of the work is improving. So this is a really cool triangle for me. How we can actually intervene to engagement better, to raise the psychological safety, and then we can have our staff members produce better and be a best part of our culture. So that's a triangle we are looking at. Another one, as Rachel mentioned, awareness. Not that you are maybe offering a lot of resources and tools to staff, but doesn't mean that they are aware of everything. So the work we have done so far for the last 5 years, increasing the awareness and kind of creating a really cool bridge between what we are offering and how they are becoming more aware of what we are offering. It's not that you should put it out there. You need to make sure all these resources landing to our staff members through different pain points.
That's great.
From onboarding to offboarding.
I love that idea. Yeah, are people even aware of what we're offering, because the organization is doing a lot. Partha, you've heard a lot from Bahar and Rachel. What are you seeing out there?
No, I agree with both Bahar and Rachel. See, I think the whole consciousness, employers feeling the need to do something around wellness space has increased in the last 2-3 years because of this whole hybrid thing. It's no longer, they were doing things before also, but it was maybe a checklist kind of a thing there. But today there's a conscious effort to provide that kind of taking care of the employee wellness stuff. That is one thing which we see definitely. A lot of demand is there, not just for us. There are lots of players in this space. At the same time, we also see that sometimes companies are trying to do whatever they were doing in the physical environment, in a digital environment. I think the more mature and advanced companies, they're looking at the digital medium as a way to improve the wellness and not just move that physical part to the digital part of it. Okay. But I think a very important point which Rachel made, the data part. Many companies are facing the basic issues around data. Okay, what is it that employees want? Okay, is it just because we think we should have one yoga class, one EAP provider, one physical walkathon in the month, just because we as HR think that is required? Okay, but what is the data? Okay, I think that we see a lot coming in from clients asking for, okay, can you provide this one platform? Can you provide this data on what is working, what is not working? That way. And the last point which I want to make here is again to just add to both Rachel and Bahar's point, is that the narrow definition of wellness is going away. So wellness earlier was maybe mental wellness, physical wellness, maybe a financial wellness to an extent. Okay, but there are lots of different factors which play into that. Simple things like, for example, we are in the recognition space also. So appreciating employees, normally it's not connected to wellness, but if you really tie it down, appreciating someone improves people's mental wellness status, right? So that helps in the overall wellness of the employee. So I think the definition of wellness is also increased, or I'd say the scope has increased there in how companies are defining it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Let's get more granular on this. And Rachel, why don't you kick us off? Wellness, as you say, does have a broad definition. What kind of wellness? I'm curious, though, when you look at that area for what you're doing at Taskus, what are some specific things you found that are working, and maybe some things that you tried that you thought were going to be great that really sort of crashed and burned? Sometimes we can learn more from our mistakes than our successes, right?
Yeah, I think, I want to just contextualize, like I'm a psychotherapist by trade, and I am not in a position to pretend that I would be expert in all facets of wellness, to part this point. Wellness is holistic. It's defined differently by different people. Even sometimes wellness can be a privileged term at that, right? Where people are just trying to get basic needs met. So my charge here is to basically address the psychological health and safety of our employees, which is managing psychological risks and hazards while promoting well-being as a broader part of an occupational health and safety model. And that's just one piece, right? I wouldn't be very successful without the help of employee benefits and facilities and all of the other elements that make up company culture. And I just want to kind of distinguish a little bit the difference between like culture and organizational climate. I think culture is thrown around a lot in this new world that we're in. Like, how do we maintain company culture? The day-to-day atmosphere is not culture. It's values and belief systems. And so what Taskus has done, as far as just kind of anecdotal ways that we've addressed this, is how do we maintain that culture of trust, that culture of support and community across the organization. One way that we've done this is through initiatives like coffee chats with leaders or a Mentor Us program, where people can sign up for 15-minute engagements with peers across the business and just get to know them. So that way you're developing those relationships with people still. It doesn't always have to be work-oriented, and it gets you out of your silos. And I think that that's been really important for our employees.
I really like the idea of you sign up for a little coffee chat, because, in the physical world, you just stop by and you'd say, hey, I'm going for a coffee. You want to come? You need to be much more intentional about it when you're in that virtual space, don't you? Partha, what are some of the things you're seeing working with your clients? Whether it's, to create that. I really like what Rachel's saying about what culture. You have to have a culture of trust before you have a culture of really anything. So have you seen some specific programs or some specific things clients are doing?
Again, like bits and pieces, what I can add here is so gamified stuff, okay, around physical wellness. For example, I'll just giving an anecdotal evidence. So, you just ask everyone to come for a challenge. But this company, what they did was they said like, hey, every million steps you do, we donate this much to the charity. Okay, as a group, kind of as a company, you do a million steps, we donate it to something. We are not going to give you like a $1 or $2 for walking 10K steps. We will donate to charity. Somehow it became, and that was during the COVID time when there was a lot of these deaths and things were happening in India. We saw that they were contributing to the Prime Minister's fund, all those things. So gamified approach is something on the physical wellness is something which we have seen. Other is, I've seen one company trying to do that. They have not yet reached there. They're not trying to create an a la carte menu of wellness services. Okay, EAP provider, physical wellness, financial wellness. They're trying to put it around life events. All right, which means that marriage, childbirth, bereavement. Okay, if you have a childbirth, it is, you don't know, I mean, what all things to require. So it tells you, okay, you need to make a will, maybe. Okay, take care of your financial wellness. Okay, so it pops up kind of thing. Okay, there's a childbirth. These are the things you need to take care of. We can help you. Okay, you can do on your own, but we can also help you with these services which are there. So around life events is something very interesting, and I just saw it in one company, and they're also not there yet. I mean, they're trying to move in that direction around life events. So that, I think, has a future, but both Bahar and Rachel might be able to add there. I think that's a very interesting way of providing it. People don't know what exactly do they need in the wellness space, but okay, you have those life events. We tell you what areas we can help you in.
That is so fascinating. I've never thought of it that way. And yet, when you have your first child, everything changes, right? And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned, do you have a will now? I would never have thought of that, right? In fact, I'm at this stage of my life where I don't want my children to know what's in the will, because I feel like being around them, that puts my well-being at risk. Bahar, tell us a little bit about some of the programs that like you said, that have worked. I mean, you have such a big group, and so does Rachel. I mean, 50,000, 300,000. How do you then get the message to your people, and who are your partners to make sure that if you've got a good program and it's working, that everybody is aware of it and using it?
Yeah, I love this question. Hopefully you all hear me well again. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Great. The pivotal decision was made after COVID is we moved Wellbeing under HR to operations. So this was a very strategic decision to have HR and operations to handshake and bring practical and actionable recommendations to our staff's daily life. Very practical recommendations to our team members, team leaders, departments, and these are very customized solutions. What has worked actually is designing our own mental health app and collecting different and diverse data points from our staff members' vitals or even their recommendations, listening circles, like combining qualitative and qualitative data and bringing very customized, personalized solutions, and using Wellbeing teams as a kind of a thought leader and joining all team meetings. It could be even a town hall, a very random maybe information session, or a HR or a team huddle. We are trying to infuse Wellbeing in every single communication in the workspace in order to make it accessible and even like fighting against stigma. This is a daily conversation. What worked very well is wellness-infused coaching sessions. We trained every manager and team leader to handle the daily conversation about performance coaching or even day-to-day conversation. And we bring wellness to these one-on-one chats and the coffee chats. Like start the conversation with just checking in how you are doing or who is your family. If it is a new joiner to the organization, just get to know them better, right? Who this person is, where they're coming from. There would be some neurodivergent employees, including myself. I am neurodivergent. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 8. I have different needs as other employees too. So how do we capture all different kind of needs through management, not through wellness teams only? We cannot separate Wellbeing as a separate entity. It has to be infused in employee experience. This is what we are trying to do through educating managers And one last program is peer support program that we trained our internal staff and certified them to have mental health conversations and coffee chats with our staff members and circulate back with us what they need, make a big change throughout this hybrid work environment.
I love the specificity that all of you are giving us there. That's just so great. Now, one of the things I'm reading a lot about is return to work. We've got a lot of senior leaders that are saying, okay, enough. We're 3 years now. Let's all come back. And Chess, you were just talking about your son who works at American Express, who goes in 3 days a week, but in many cases he's alone, right? So what do we think about this? So if some of our HR leaders are watching today and they're being told, bring everybody back in, well, what's the answer to that? Or is there a simple answer, or is that kind of a complex issue we need to work through? Chess, why don't you start us and give us some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is so interesting. Culture, as we've talked about, can sometimes be overused and a little vague. What kind of culture? There are some industries where, if you're in the restaurant industry, you pretty much you can't cook remotely. If you're the chef, you got to be there. On the other side is you do have companies like you're mentioning in the financial industry where you have options. I have two sons in the financial industry. One is very much hybrid. The other is very much in person, and they mandated it right, a little early. I thought that, look, if you're going to work with us, you're coming in every day. Now, did they lose some employees? Yeah, they did. They were willing to make that trade to say, we know, at least this is our culture, we know that we're going to be more productive when we're together. So we're coming together. Now, if you need to take some precautions, whether it's wear a mask or disinfect or whatever, that's fine. Figure it out. You're going to be here 5 days a week. Yeah. The other one that's interesting to me really quickly, though, is that when you are hybrid and you sort of mandate, let's say twice a week or 4 times a month, whatever it might be, is the success that I'm seeing are companies that say, hey, your team comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that you don't have what happened to my son, where he goes, Dad, we've got a floor that holds like 300 people, and I'm lucky if I see 4 or 5 people every time I go in. Now, they do try to entice him with free lunch, and with my son, that works great. Free food is right in his sweet spot. Mm-hmm. The point is if you're coming in, what's on the agenda? Yeah. Are you going to have time to collaborate? Are there other people there? And I'd really be interested to hear from the others. Are you mandating that you come in on certain days? What are you finding that
what works and what doesn't with return to work? Rachel, what do you
there? Right.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to just pan out and again kind of anecdotally talk about what seems to be some industry trends, feels a little bit like, do you remember when your parents well, just do it because I said so? That's kind of like the feeling I get. And I think we're not trusting employees enough to just give them the honest truth. Sometimes there's security reasons involved and a variety of other things that doesn't really get disseminated down to the frontline worker, which I think is a disservice to them. So I think better and more effective communication is really critical in people understanding what is the limitations of this company, because the reality is I think what employees are telling themselves is, well, I've been able to do this job effectively for 3 years without being in the office. So why now is this a priority? So I would just suggest that more transparent communication is a part of messaging here as to the why, and allow employees to be in on the conversation. So that's one thing. I think too, it's really important where possible to provide flexibility and some autonomy to employees. If it becomes this all or nothing kind of rigidity conversation, I think employers are going to feel that pain over time, where they do see employees leave and they're not as competitive as their peers who are able to offer some flexibility and autonomy. So I think what I've noticed is just internally is that those conversations with teams that need to be on a site are really specific and transparent around security issues and that sort of thing. So employees are aware, and then trying to find opportunities for flexibility where it makes sense. so there's some buy-in. So I think those would be the things that would come to mind.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, giving the why behind a decision. What a novel concept. Bahar, if I hired you as my my advisor here, and my CEO is saying, "Look, we've got to bring everybody back in," what advice would you give?
Yeah, two advice come to my mind. The first one is every organism needs to have some preparation process. So we don't like actually abrupt changes or like all of a sudden kind of a different paths are always scary. So it's important to feel like these are human beings and they all need some sort of preparation to change, and giving some time and doing in phases would be just one approach that I would recommend. But the second one is, let's be open to changes again in the future. Let's say we make a decision to bring back everybody to the office. Well, can we be open to the idea to flexibility or doing A/B testing for a while? Let's see if it's going to work or not. We shouldn't stick to the fact that, yeah, this is going to work for everybody. It wouldn't. So I think we would be open to failures and keep on learning from our mistakes, errors, failures. That's okay too. Maybe last year we make this decision, but it's not going to work. So how can we be more creative and keep on doing research and being critical about the decision, and maybe potentially say to employees transparently, as to Rachel mentioned, you know what, we make this decision, but it is not working. So how can we actually be more flexible and maybe even backtrace and give another decision in the next year if needed be? So that would be my second recommendation.
That's a great advice. Yeah. Partha, what do you think on return to work? What are you seeing, and what advice would you give to leaders? Oh, and you're muted, Partha.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. From our side, I mean, let me give this for just like for most questions, the answer depends on the context. Now, we are a company, we are 250 odd people. Okay. We are in a very early stage of our growth, and the employees hiring, the team size doubles up in a year. Okay. Now for us, we have mandated in office. Okay. So for us, because we are very people dependent still, it is not process oriented totally. Okay. So it's not like it's independent of people. Today, if Adrian is doing this, if Adrian gets replaced by Partha, it's not the same thing for us. Okay. Our processes are not that refined or very strong there. So we need people to be in office. Secondly, we also for our training needs. Okay. We feel that if you're in office, you just are able to do things a little faster, just bumping into someone. I'm not talking about the cliche thing, the coffee, about the water cooler space kind of thing, but just being there, exchanging information, I think is much easier for us, because we are also in the same building, by the way. Okay, we are not spread across 50 countries kind of thing. We're in the same building. So it has a huge impact on it. Of course, we also understand the situation, and then there is this challenge of people leaving us kind of thing if we don't give the flexibility. So we have given the flexibility that if you need to work from home, just tell us the reason. Okay, why? Okay, you have something, the kid is not well or something is not there, that's fine, you walk. But at least give a reason why you want to work from home. And we have allowed people to work from home for a month. Okay, because there's some medical issue in the family there. So I think in our context, it is very, I totally support, but I can understand, as the company becomes bigger, the processes set, you are already in 100 different buildings. Okay, so what difference does it make if you come to office or not? So yeah, so in our context, that's what we have done.
Excellent. So, we've talked a lot about data and collecting data and trusting your people and explaining the why and so on. But Bahar, I'd like to get you involved on this one. So are you seeing tangible results when you do all these things and people feel like they're in a wellness space? They feel like the company's taking care of them. Are you able to measure like productivity? Because I always say, look, you do all these things and they're nice things to do. And we should be nice, right? We should be kind and make our parents proud of us, right? There's got to be a financial gain, though. We're in business to stay in business. So are you seeing as you've implemented some of these programs, some really tangible results in like profitability, engagement, productivity?
Exactly. A very interesting research we have conducted for work from home, hybrid, and working in the office setting through wearable devices, which is like tech company we have been actually collaborating for a while, that we bring these devices to measure heartbeat, and we correlate that with an oxytocin hormone in the blood, which is a psychological safety and engagement hormone. And with that hormone, we are looking at actually what are the trends when we see higher engagement, high psychological safety and productivity. And there is a very good correlation between when we are keeping people engaged and not letting them suffer in silo, and when we bring very tangible interventions to keep them part of process, make them creative, and have them talk about their challenges, especially when we onboard them in the hybrid environment or work from home environment, then their productivity also improved. So there is a tangible relationship between, I would say, Chester, engagement and productivity. But we need to define it, what engagement is. For every company, it might be different. For us, having our staff members be present. It's not actually being engaged in the activities or maybe in the calls or in the conversations. It's just having them cognitively be present on the job that they're doing and being supported by their management system and management chain, and having conversations going on honestly, keeping them engaged in the work that they're doing. That increased tech safety and increased productivity, I would say.
Wow. So you really could connect the dots. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So Rachel, quick case study. I was dealing with this kind of tech company down in DC. They do a lot with ministries of defense and so on. And they all went hybrid and their productivity skyrocketed. The problem is that they just built this beautiful new headquarters that was like super cool. And the founders and the CEO said, I get that we're more productive. I just spent all this money. I really want you to come back. So there was this push-pull where HR was saying, yeah, but we just had our best year ever. Like, why would you mess with that? So how do you manage that? And how do you then bring the data in that says, okay, this is why we're doing it and why we're so productive? How do you manage that?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I feel like managing leasing contracts is above my pay grade and what CEOs want to do with their money. But all I can do as a leader in the company is bring forth what the data is, right? I hear and appreciate that there is a lot of anecdotal information that gets flown around, right? A CEO is in front of someone, they're saying, we love the office, we want to be here. That's great and that's real, but it isn't trackable data over time. And so what I try to do is educate our leaders on trackable, real, tangible data to make those decisions. And to Bahar's point, we also do a fair amount of internal research. We have a division of research that's attached to our wellness team who's conducted about 30 different studies to date on mental health and well-being. And all of those data points collectively over and over again show that folks that are getting well-being investment and their well-being needs met, which in our case, as we mentioned earlier, the perceived well-being is higher when working from home, is that those folks are performing 4% higher on their average KPIs. They're 8% higher in their accuracy, and consistently year over year, we see a delta of a 50% reduction in annualized attrition. I mean, that's just the data, right? So the data is what the data is. And that's kind of what we tell the business. It's like, we're looking beyond well-being metrics. Yes, those are important and we want to understand those. But from a business case, this is what makes sense right now for our workplace. And that's not to suggest that that's a plug and play across all workplaces. To Partha's point, every work environment is different, but I think investing in actual data and looking at what the story the data is telling you is critical in any work setting. And I get it. It stinks to be in a position where you are paying rent on a very fancy building, but I won't say anything about that.
You should run for political office. That's really a good answer. So, let's go to Partha. Partha, I mean, your job as a partner in business is to say, look, if you do this, you'll be more productive. So how do you make that case? How do you connect the dots that wellness really is part of your productivity model?
Sorry. Sorry.
This is working from home. This is what happens.
That's what happens. See, that's why you need to come back in. Yeah.
I just switched off. Okay, just let me just.
Oh, there it is again. Somebody really wants to get a hold of you, Partha.
Yeah. No, I don't know why this.
Those collection agencies, I tell you, they're terrible.
Yeah, okay, gone. Sorry, no, that was my Skype ringing there. Okay. Yeah. So I think. Can you repeat the question again? Because I was just.
Your job really as a partner is to say, look, the reason you want to focus on well-being is because, like I said, the data shows that you're going to be more productive. How are you
Right.
making that case, and what data are you using to guide
Yeah.
your clients along?
So we are saying that, see, one is we have to make one is, if people don't want to really believe data, it's very difficult to convince them, and I think you're seeing it all across the world in the political space, right? So we say that, if you're able to take care of the employee wellness needs to a certain extent, don't expect to solve all your employee wellness needs. Okay, you can't. As a company, you can't do that. But even if you're able to do it to a certain extent, yeah, they're able to focus. And I think Bahar or Rachel had mentioned this. They're able to focus in their work. Okay, focus leads to engagement leads to productivity there. So we are trying to show, because our platform also allows some kind of measurement on the pulse tools which are there, the engagement scores. So we are saying that I can't give it till the productivity data, but at least to the engagement levels I can tell you. Okay, if you are doing this initiative, the people who are participating in those initiatives in the company, their engagement levels are higher, and that's through a straightforward, a pulse survey which is continuously running there. The engagement levels are higher. I don't have the mechanism right now to connect it to the productivity there, but that the companies have the data, they can always do it on their own. Secondly, we also tell them, that it's suddenly someone like very senior up says, oh, will it reduce my attrition? I don't know. Okay, if it reduces it, because there's so many different factors which play in an attrition thing there. But will the engagement, as long as they're in the company, will the engagement be there? Yes, that is definitely provable there. Secondly, the it's a journey is what we tell them, that you improve. It's not going to like suddenly go from X level to 10x that level kind of thing. It's a journey. You start on it. Do you see the improvement in the engagement levels? That is, I think, very clear. Okay, and sometimes you don't even have to look at data. It's very commonsensical. You take care of the wellness needs, definitely they are going to be more engaged there. Okay, but this data which we give along with the pulse surveys and all those things, that helps to convince some of the skeptics there. But our pitch is not going, and we say that this is the theory, this is all the research which is there. Okay, you should start out with it, and then we will show you the data, how it's improving. So that's how we are going about it. Yeah.
Well, this is, I love the idea of data here. Let's get a little bit more granular with human beings, because both Rachel and Bahar, both therapists, and you, most of us managers are not. And so, especially in the hybrid world, let's start with Rachel. I mean, if I'm managing a hybrid team and I've got a lot of people remote, how am I looking that somebody maybe is starting to struggle when I'm not with them day to day?
That's a good question. Sorry, I saw my internet lagging, so let me know if I skip at all. I think implementing good early warning systems, and that can be through data collection. So are you partnering with either external entities or hiring people that can collect psychometric data to indicate whether or not there's any sort of mental health degradation? I think is important. Also, Bahar mentioned earlier, are you training people across the business to recognize signs and symptoms and be armed with some basic psychological first aid? No one's suggesting that people need to be therapists and go and intervene. We actually don't want you to do that. But we also have a very similar program that we call Wellness Heroes, which is an ally program where people can enroll and volunteer to be wellness allies and go through a series of training with our team and become certified on an annual basis. And then there's continuing education that happens annually to ensure that they have all of the proper information from our team to be knowledgeable, to intervene in a safe way and ensure that they're getting people to the resources that they need. And that doesn't just start with frontline employees. It's also really critical for management and leadership engagement to participate and model. And so across the business, we often mandate certain leadership trainings as part of the company culture, and ensure that leaders are kind of modeling best practices for their employees underneath. So
I love that idea. Yeah, modeling best practices. I remember in our book, Anxiety at Work, we used a case study where one of the programmers in a company sent out an email saying, look, I've just finished this big project. I need a few mental health days. And the CEO responded to all saying, I love this behavior. Thank you for leading the way. And the CEO was an excellent example, that idea of, yeah, are we doing that ourselves? Not only, maybe being a little vulnerable ourselves as well. Rachel?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's a really powerful example to have a CEO comment in that way. I can't imagine how far that actually goes for employees.
Bahar, what kinds of signs should we be looking for in this hybrid world that may be a little different than when we were all face to face?
Yeah, totally. Rachel summarized it beautifully, but what I will be actually adding more is sometimes people doesn't even talk about mental health or even doesn't show signs, but I really love simplifying things and being a real human and looking people from heart-to-heart perspective. Even sometimes isolation would speak it all. So seeing people suffer in isolation, not contributing, and seeing that something shifted in them, it would be even a hygiene or even not turning the camera on, not contributing to the conversation. It's just sensitizing each other about social conversation day-to-day basis. Training is a big part of it, or talking about mental health, certifying managers, yes, for sure, 100%. Yeah. But let's make it daily basis. Let's make it simple and pay attention to each other. So it's sometimes very easy and sometimes it's not. But I feel like we hear a lot of feedback, sometimes putting pressure on managers on giving them responsibility about spotting the sign, being accountable to like taking care of staff members is sometimes a huge responsibility, and you would lose the manager's even involvement too, right? This is risky. Yeah. So it's just making it accessible and approachable in terms of communication. So it's a two-way road. Having stuff coming to you also is very important. So I would say talking about mental health, championing managers to even talk about their own vulnerability, or having them be more authentic, and even doing some storytelling. Like, how are we going to connect the dots and do some storytelling on the social media, internally, through internal communications, sharing some stories, having CEO or even high-level managers to talk about well-being and mental health and putting their heart out of there, even have our staff sometimes approach them better. So it's a two-way road, I would say, and I can conclude recommending people to be human, I would say.
I love that idea, and especially the hygiene too. Like, what if you what if you knew somebody who wore the same orange shirt day after day after? Is that kind of a red flag or an orange flag, perhaps?
Rachel, I'm learning to be political. I'm not going to say anything. Look it up.
Awesome, very good. No, I love that idea of making this very human. Now, Partha, pick on you because you're about to fly to Canada to meet some of your employees, and how are you going to make sure your employees are feeling good? Because you don't see these folks very often. So here you are, finally getting to be in touch with them. How are you going to, as a CEO, connect with your people, make sure that they're okay when you don't see them very often?
True. I mean, actually, this is the first time I'm traveling there. The team has been there for the last 2 years, about just 10 odd people there. See, for me, the two things. I mean, one is the cultural nuances also, which are there, right? We are primarily India-based company with just 10 guys, 10 people in Canada and US there. So I am sensitizing myself on the cultural nuances there, which are required, because certain behavior, when I see in India, the interpretation is different. Okay, certain behavior in North America is different. I mean, it doesn't mean that, sometimes I see, why is this person saying this way? Okay, it's not a sign of disrespect there. It's the way of doing things there. Okay, in India, it's more a little bit touchy-feely kind of thing there. So I think I am sensitizing myself on that, and I said like, hey, with just 1 week, I mean, there's no agenda kind of thing. I'm not going there for a pep talk or something like that. I'll just work with you for 1 week there, and hopefully that things will open up. I'm not going with a specific agenda. Of course, it is to tell them that they are important. The North America team is important for us. There's a management focus in that, but overall, just talking to them, and just trying to understand the non-work part of it, I think would be more fun.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're in the lightning round now. We've got about four minutes to go. We always talk about being vulnerable, talking about your leadership practices. So let's just go around the board here really quick. What's one thing that, because we're all hybrid. I love this screen here. I'm in Las Vegas. Adrian's in Utah. We got India. We've got Turkey, and on and on. So what are you doing in your remote work that keeps you, psychologically safe, keeps you well? And let's start with Bahar, and we'll go to Partha, and then over to Rachel.
Yeah, I have one personal example and one team level example. Personal level, since I have ADHD, I get overstimulated so quickly. So I have to wake up minimum 2 hours before my first meeting, regardless what time it starts at. Like it would be 5 a.m. meeting, I have to wake up then 3 a.m. So to prepare myself, it would be a gentle walk or just breathing exercise, having some, motivational speaking internally myself. It could be anything. It's a personal level. But work related, I would say, I have a very beautiful global team, and every Friday to my direct reports and direct peers, we have a 1 hour call ending the week, and we definitely wrap up the week, but at the same time, for the last 15-20 minutes, we just talk about anything. Just shout out if you need anything, just tell how we can support each other. Do they need me for the next week, or do I need them for the next week better? So just give some feedback to each other honestly, and be real, be a human, and have this exchange, this conversation helps me so much unwind and wrap up the week, and I get ready for the next week with their help. That's what I do.
That's great. Partha, we got 3 minutes, so you got to be quick here. What do you do?
Yeah. So by the way, while our company works from one place, I am in a slightly different location, so I work remote. Okay. So now I mandate everyone to come to office. So no, I just try to make sure that I have some space of my own. Even if I'm working from home, I make some space for my own. And I've also started doing the last 2-3 months actually physical part. Somehow I had ignored it always. The physical wellness part is something which mental wellness I'm okay. I feel I'm okay on that. But the physical part, I'm actively going to the gym now every day of the week, 6 days. Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Rachel, bring it home.
Yeah, so I think this was mentioned a little bit earlier, which I think is a good call out. Not everybody is able and comfortable or has learned even to vocalize their emotions. And sometimes emotions show up physically for people. I'm definitely one of those people. I will notice more physical symptoms before I'll notice other things. And so I'm not doing it now because I would be out of breath, but I have a walking treadmill right here that goes under my desk that I use often when I'm on internal calls, which helps me. And to Bahar's point, as a leader of a global team, there's a variety of ways that we infuse, kind of practice what we preach, but even something as passive as in my emails, I have like a big, bold disclaimer. If you've emailed me outside of the working hours identified in my calendar, please anticipate a delay in my response. And additionally, while it suits me to email you now, I do not expect a response outside of your working hours unless it's convenient for you. So something as simple as that can go a long way to diffuse what it looks like when there's authority emailing you, and what that looks like for people who may feel like there's a deference to that authority. So
that is a great best practice. For me, I wear orange every day. And if you ever see me not wearing orange, you know that I am struggling. Adrian, I'm going to give it to you. I get to kick off. Adrian gets to wrap up.
Oh, no, this has been just so delightful. I've taken notes, and I think everybody listening has too, some terrific takeaways. I want to thank Bahar, Partha, Rachel. On behalf of Chester Elton and myself, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Of course, thank you to Vantage Circle for sponsoring this amazing panel that really has given us amazing insights into managing and wellness in a hybrid world. So thank you for everybody for joining us. And until next time, we wish you the best of mental health. Thanks, everybody.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.